Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of the JNUC. So if you're here to learn about advanced reporting in the Casper Suite. We're going to be talking about reporting in version 8. Some of you are still using that, I assume. Reporting in version 9, as well as some of the new stuff that has been introduced in version 9 to help with reporting. And then we are actually going to dive into the database a little bit, as well as look at some third-party tools and how you can use those with reporting. So today I'm joined by John Sutcliffe, Matt Anderson, and Dave Searing. We're all members of the development team here at Jamf. So to get started, I just wanted to talk about the reporting in version 8. So there's a lot of different aspects of reporting, whether it be from the device, and that's where you can get very specific details about a device in the JSS. There's the basic search, so anytime you're trying to just quickly find some information about a group of devices, we use basic searches for that. We've got advanced searches, and all three of these are built into the JSS. So advanced searches are helpful anytime you're looking to get a group of devices based on some very narrow criteria that you define. From that, we kind of dive into the things that aren't necessarily just built in, not necessarily just out of the box. And so custom reports are one of those. The JSS API is another avenue for that. And then the database is the last thing that we'll talk about there. So first of all, looking at reporting on the device. Again, this is the place to go to if you want to see some very granular information about a device or a computer in the JSS, right? We can find information from what apps are installed to what the battery level is on the device. A lot of information about that specific device right there. So then moving on to the basic search, again, this is a way we can quickly find information about a group of devices. So if I just go to the search bar there, type in NIC, it's going to show me all of the devices that come back that are either assigned to me or have my name in the device name or something like that, right? So it's a quick way to be able to find information. Moving on to the advanced searches from there, this is where we have some complex criteria. So instead of just finding devices that are assigned to me, maybe I have a very narrow set of criteria that I wanted to search on. Another thing with advanced searches is that you can customize the display field. So if you were in one of the basic searches and you didn't quite see all the information you wanted to see, you can specifically add fields to the advanced search that you want to see. And then lastly, you can customize the export options. So if you've been looking at the search in the web page, you can take that data, you can export it to a CSV if you want to process it in Excel or something like that. So I wanted to walk through a scenario today of how you might use an advanced search using Casper Focus as an example. So let's say you have Casper Focus deployed in your environment. Your teachers are using it. One of the things you're probably going to want to know is if your teachers have a passcode set on their iPads, right? Because if a student were to get that iPad, they could potentially unlock it and start controlling the classroom. So we want to make sure that we remediate that scenario. So in this advanced search, we're going to look for any device that has iOS 7, that's running Casper Focus, and then that does not have a passcode present. And when we search on that, we get 2 records back. So right away, there's 2 devices I should probably go out. I actually have the user's email addresses right there, and I can email them directly from this page. But I want to let them know, like, hey, you don't have a passcode present here. It's a potential vulnerability, right? So then moving on to the custom report, let's say that there's some information that you see in the device details that you're not really able to find in a basic search or an advanced search. A custom report is a great way to be able to get that data. And the other thing about a custom report is that you can put your own logo on it. You can format it however you want. One of the pros of a custom report is that there's no third-party tools here. This is built right into the JSS in version 8. One of the cons, though, is that this is using like a private API. It's not the REST API. It's not the Events API. It's more the actual JSS Object API. So you have to look at some templates, or you usually have to give us a call for some assistance with this stuff, so it can get pretty complex. But here's an example of a custom report that we did for a customer. This particular customer wanted application usage data exported out of the JSS. And in version 8, we didn't have a really good way to do that. So we were able to create a custom report And here you see all the apps that I use on a particular day. We could use pivot tables to sort that information if we wanted to, but I've got it all in a CSV file here. But behind the scenes, this is what it looks like. I mean, there's uglier code, but there's definitely some code involved with actually creating this, right? So then moving on to the API, same kind of idea. One of the pros with an API is that it's stable. So we did a lot of testing between version 8 and version 9 to make sure that the same objects were available, that the format was very similar as well between the two APIs. So we're maintaining that going forward. One of the cons is that it does require some programming experience, and another one, maybe some third-party tools. So it's not, there's a lot of resources out there on how to work with these things, and there's a lot of tools that actually integrate directly with it, but it does require some setup and a little bit of expertise to be able to do that. And this is just an example of what an export looks like out of the API. So this is the mobile devices page that we're hitting, getting a list of all the mobile devices back from the JSS. And you get some basic information right there. You can dive deeper by looking at the details for a mobile device as well. And this is exported in XML. We can also export in the JSON format. Then the database. One of the pros with the database is that you get full access to all the data. Dave Searing's going to go into a lot deeper detail with this, but it also kind of acts as one of the cons because you have full access to all the data. So you just have to be really careful how you work with this because we don't want to muck with any of the data that's in the JSS necessarily. One of the cons here is that it's a normalized data structure, so this can be very complex when you're trying to even just do something as basic as get a computer along with the applications for that computer. It's not just a single table that you need to look at for that information, so it can get pretty complex. And then lastly is stability. So as we've discussed throughout this conference, we've changed a lot in the database structure from version 8 to version 9. And so if you're building stuff against the database, that is a risk potentially, right? We do add some tables from time to time. We add fields. We change the length of fields as we need to. We try to do that only when we really need to, but it is a risk when you build stuff against the database. And then lastly, some third-party tools are required for this as well. So at minimum, you'll probably need an ODC connector, which John and Dave are both going to talk about to some extent. But definitely some third-party tools involved here. And this is just a query that I had from back in the day. I'm sure you guys have some of your own as well. Dave's going to show some, but it really is great to be able to get some specific information that you're looking for using the database. So that's reporting, and those are the options that were available in version 8. I'm going to introduce Matt Anderson to the stage now to talk about reporting in version 9.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, so like Nick said, I'm just going to talk quick about what's available in 9, basically through the interface or API. So just basically hitting on the same points that Nick hit on, but talking about them in version 9, what improvements were made, what additional things are shown. So the same points. The only thing I'm going to leave out is custom reporting because that capability is removed in 9. And that's kind of the point of this talk is how to replace some of that stuff. So to start out, the device view, you can see here I have a computer view up looking at the application list that's reported back, pretty much the same thing. If we go to that history tab and look at application usage, we get some nice graphs based on the application usage reported back. So it's kind of a new thing. A basic search, super hard to see, but I'm searching for a MacBook here, and I have a star at the end to wildcard that out. Hit enter on that, and I get the 2 computers back that were the result of that query. And you can see that there's some paging done now. So if I had, I don't know what I'm set at here, 100 or 1,000. If I had more than 100 computers returned in this basic search, I'd actually get multiple pages on these tabs, which helps in loading the page quite a bit. And also you can filter those results with that filter box at the top. Advanced search, again, it's the same concept. The advanced searches are migrated over, but the view of it has changed a little bit right here with basic search. If we click on one of those, we can click through the tabs, and here we're looking at the criteria pane. Hard to see again, but just showing that we kind of consolidated the views and made it a little bit easier to organize yourself on the advanced searches. So then here's the results of that, again, with the paging for advanced searches too, being able to filter those. And then with the export option, if I click on that, I'm taken to some options of how I could export that data. So if I click next there, I get a CSV dumped out and can still do some reporting in Excel with that. The next thing, new thing for 9 is the JSS dashboard and the dashboard views. Here in this screen, I have a display of some smart groups and policy statuses. So if I click on one of the smart group buttons here, I get taken to the advanced search that's basically its equivalent. And that was another big thing in 9, is making the logic for smart groups and advanced searches tied together on the back end. So that's kind of a neat thing, being able to click on that from the dashboard and getting the results of that. And the other thing back on the dashboard, you can see all these different statuses of a policy run or the deployment of that policy. You can see with this one, I have a few that are failed. If I click on that link of failed ones, I'm taken to the results of a search that shows me the failed policy runs. So kind of a cool way to be able to remediate that failure. Onto the API. We added a bunch of documentation, a bunch of new method calls, some more data you can pull out of the REST API. But here's a shot of the new documentation. So the idea of showing this in this talk is being able to generate some of your own custom reporting with the API, and this documentation can kind of help get you started on that. So if I click on computer, I get a listing of all the gets, puts, posts, and deletes that are available for the computer object. And if I click on any of those, they'll expand out. I get examples, some documentation on that method, and also a listing of all the parameters. And then right there from the documentation, I can try it out. So I can enter in parameters, computer ID, a subset, anything like that, and hit try it. And I'd actually get the XML results right there in line on the web page. So that may not be super useful directly for your reporting needs, but being able to kind of test it out right here while you're kind of exploring is, I think, a helpful thing. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dave, and he's going to talk a little bit about some database options you'd have.
Thanks, Matt. So now, Matt and Nick just kind of ran through some of the stuff that we currently have built into the JSS, both version 8 and version 9. But when that's not enough, where can we look? Matt mentioned the API a little bit. We had a session on that yesterday, so if that's the route that you want to go, be sure to check out the recording of that. It was something that was a great feature in 8. We pushed it pretty heavily. Still a great feature in 9, so definitely something to check out. But admittedly, there's going to be times where even that's not going to quite get you where you need to go. And at that point, we can go and query directly from the database. Now, before I kind of dive in, a couple things I just want to preface. I'm going to try to stay at a higher level, so I'm not going to get into actually building any of the SQL or some of these queries. And I'm going to focus very heavily on the computer inventory and some improvements that we've made to help with reporting in version 9. There's a lot of information in the JSS. I think in version 9 we've got something around 230 tables. So if there's something specific that you guys are looking to get, catch us after the session. We'll be happy to give you a little more guidance in some specific areas. But with that, let's kind of jump in and start by just kind of chatting about how the inventory is actually stored in the database. Now, when a client submits its inventory, that's going to get broken up into several different chunks. You'll have things like operating system, hardware details, applications, fonts, plugins, and those are all going to get broken out into separate tables. To tie that all back together, we assign a unique report ID to each one of those inventory submissions so that when you do have to actually hit the database, we have a route to go to get them. But if we look at just the inventory section of the JSS, there's a lot of tables there, and that becomes a pretty complicated thing to actually get information out of in 8. So just kind of as a rough example, let's say we want to do a search for the computer name, the operating system version, and username. To do that, we'd have to start with our computer object, go to the reports table, find out whatever the most recent report for that device was, and then go and hit the 3 separate tables to get that data back. What you end up with is a simple query that looks something like this. So it's really not that easy to build in 8 currently. And if any of you have gone down this route, you might be seeing why we push the API pretty heavily at that point. To help with this, in version 9, we've introduced the concept of a denormalized table. What that means is that we've taken a lot of the inventory information that was in separate tables, and we've kind of pulled that all into one giant table, kind of as a one-stop shop for the inventory information. Something important to note with that is that all the other tables are still there, so anything that you've currently written in 8 or you're going to write will continue to work as you move forward to 9, so you don't have to rework all of that stuff. But if we actually take a look at the schema in 9 that you need for reporting, you can see it's already a lot simpler. And so if we jump back to that to the query that we've got there, this would be the equivalent query in version 9. So just much easier to actually pull that data back and move forward with it. Now, this was all computer inventory. We've made a denormalized table on the mobile device side as well, so there is some parity there. Otherwise, like I said, if there's other specific data that you're looking to get, catch us after the session. Happy to give you some guidance on where to look for that. But with that, I will turn it over to John, and he will walk us through how we can take some of these queries and make reports with third-party tools.
Thanks, Dave. The beauty of the JSS is there is so much intelligence built into that. We've gone out of our way to put as much of that at your fingertips as we can, but every enterprise has different needs for information. I want to ask a couple of questions quick before we roll into this. How many of you today have tied in a third-party reporting tool to your JSS? Has anybody out here done that? We've got a few folks who have. Did it present any challenges when you went after that a little bit? All right, so what we'll start with here as we move into this, because we're going to talk about some of these terms as we go through. BI, here's my button. Oop. BI, BA, business intelligence, business analytics. These are the process of taking a look at the information that's in there, putting it in a manner that other parties can take a look at it and make business decisions as we go ahead. Maybe you want to start to keep track of your depreciation and your max. You need to get that information out of your JSS, somewhere over into a magic accounting system somewhere. These are the kinds of tools when you're looking around that can help you with that. And you can build reports or get this information out for those people to make those kinds of decisions. ODBC, Nick mentioned it earlier. ODBC stands for Open Database Connectivity. This is a tool that Microsoft wrote way back in the day when I still had hair. It's kind of one of these, it's a connector to a data store that kind of takes away some of the extra work for a developer. So if you want to be able to connect to MySQL, where your JSS is, or you want to be able to connect to SQL Server, an Oracle database, Postgres, different sorts of things like that, an ODBC connector can help you with that. And again, this is kind of a little bit of a Windows-centric tool, but one of the demos we're going to take a look at is using Excel to do some analysis, and Excel uses an ODBC connector to get there. So that's why that's in here. The other thing I want to talk about very quickly is ETL. An ETL tool is called Extract, Transform, and Load, which is a little bit confusing, but at the end of the day, what it's about is taking data out of whatever your data store is. In our case, it'd be the JSS, transforming it into something that might be a little bit easier to do some reporting off of, and then loading it into this other data store. We have a tool we talked about in the API session yesterday, the JSS to JSS connector, which in a sense is extracting and loading, put it in another database. One of the things to bear in mind when you're doing these sorts of things against your JSS is JSS is really designed to be a transaction processing system. What that means is the primary capability is to be able to, when devices check in, they can update the database with their current information and go about their work. That's what the JSS is for. When you start to build reporting on top of that, you're adding additional load to that database. And it's something you have to be careful of and measure when you're doing this. An ETL tool is one way around this, or the JSS to JSS connector, to push that data somewhere else if you're going to be doing heavy-duty reporting. So as we step into these cool reporting tools that we're going to show you examples going right against the JSS, bear in mind you want to be careful when you go at this because it does put additional load on your machine. First thing we're going to do is an Excel demo. And I kind of wanted to walk you through the steps of what we're going to show before we dive into it. First thing we're going to do is build our ODBC connection to a Jamf database. It's a sample database that we use internally. Then we're going to open up Excel. I think you'll be able to spot that in the demo when it comes up. And go ahead and use that data source, that ODBC data source, to connect to our MySQL store. A couple of cool things, too, is if you wanted to build something to connect to multiple data stores to bring information together, you could do that with ODBC. Again, a little more complicated thing, but if you've got information from different stores you want to bring together, it's a possibility. There's a lot of power here. Then we're going to jump into a tool called SQL Pro. This is where I like to go, and a number of us use this. It's a free tool. We'll have a link to these things at the end of the demos here, where I like to build the query. It's a good place to be able to go in, play with your SQL before you start to plug it into Excel. You can build your queries in Excel directly in the tool that comes with it. I just prefer to go this way. It's a little more friendly to be able to work the queries and get your syntax worked out. Again, if you have questions about SQL, we can talk about those later. We're going to try to stay out of the weeds on that today. And then we're going to run the query in Microsoft Query Builder. That's a tool that Excel spins up when you put this together. And we're going to return that data into our Excel spreadsheet and take a quick look at how we can do some heavy-duty analysis in there, do some filtering, do some cross-tabbing, and those kinds of things. So here we go. I'm going to type really fast here. You won't even see my fingers move. Okay, we're going to start quickly here. All right. Firing up the ODC Manager. This is another free tool you can get. And you can see there are already 2 ODBC connections in here. And we're going to go ahead and build another one for this demo. And again, this is using a tool from a company called Actual. It was about 30 bucks, works very well. But again, I'm going to choose their open source designer. Open source, pop that open. And again, this is going to provide that layer of me being able to connect from Excel into my MySQL database. Say OK. Choose that. We've already gone ahead and entered our licenses. Their demo will only return 3 rows when you do it. Just kind of a little gotcha there. But we're going to name this JNUC demo. So you're going to be able to find that in your list of data sources as we go forward. We're very creative with our naming. Jamf software for JNUC demo. Now I'm choosing MySQL as the kind of database I want to connect to. Now, I'm pointing it to where's my server at. I'm just using my local machine here, but I'm going to go ahead and use my IP. I do have my database with a password that's not Jamf1234, so please don't try to connect. Root is what all great developers use on their machine. So we'll continue on here. Now we're connected. And I am going to store that in a keychain to make things simpler. Now, I've got a list of all the databases that are on in my MySQL store, and I'm going to choose my Jamf software database. So now when I use this connection, that's what it's going to connect to, and it's going to show me the tables in there. We'll do a quick test. I need to log in. It hasn't put the password into my keychain yet. It'll do it at the end of this. Now, test successful. You want to make sure that works, because again, if this doesn't connect correctly, you're going to have all sorts of problems you get down the food chain. So we'll go ahead and close out of this. And now we're going to jump into Excel and get rolling on a report here. I didn't like that workbook, so I close it, and I create a new one. because I figured everybody would want to know how to create a new workbook in Excel, right? So here we go, new workbook. We're going to make it a little bit bigger so you can see, but remember, this is being recorded so you can go back and look at this later. All right, 150%, I'm old, I need that anyway, but see the data tab right there. That's your connection to your outside. We're going to click that. We're going to go get and build a new database query from external data. External data, anything outside of the Excel realm. Here are our ODBC connections, and you can see the JNUC demo that we had built earlier. You could have built this right here in Excel, but I wanted to show you that ODBC Manager tool, which is kind of nice. So JNUC demo, right there's where we go if we wanted to add a new one. Come back, pick it, and remember now, this is pointing directly at our Jamf software database. I'm going to click OK, eventually. Now, we are in Microsoft Query Designer tool. Right away when you come in, I've got a list of all the tables that are in my Jamf software database. Blow it up a little bit so you can see it, kind of scroll up and down here. So I could build my query right here, but again, this tool, not my preference. If it works for you, fantastic. But we're going to go ahead and jump out into SQL Pro here very quickly. We'll close this up. And again, with SQL Pro, the nice thing is you're building queries, you can store those to be able to use in different places as well. Perhaps you've got a database administrator who builds those for you, and they can provide them to you so you can build your reports. Started up SQL Pro. This is not using ODBC. This has a connector built right to it. We're going to go ahead and log into our database again. Connect. And we need to pick our Jamf software database. So here we go. In the interest of time, I didn't think we'd develop the SQL right in front of you, so I am going to pull it magically off my hard drive in just a second here. We'll go ahead and open that up. And again, we've gone with the all creative, making sure JNUC is the name of everything we use while you guys are in town. So there we go. And here's the magic SQL. This is the thing that's going to go against our database, pull that data in. And again, you'll be able to see this a little better if you go back and look at it, and we'll talk about these things as well. So I built this query. It looks like it took me 30 seconds to do it, a little more time than that. But now I can do a quick run to make sure I'm getting the data back. And this is a great time as you're doing this, you're experimenting, figure out how you want to sort things. How do you want to return them? Do you want to limit your data? And those kinds of things. Here's my data. I'm going to copy this, move it back into Excel. Here we go. Paste that in. And again, I'm going to do another test before I run this back into my Excel spreadsheet. But the magic is about to happen when I hit that return data. And this is what's super cool to me. And this is that same report that Nick was showing in the Series 8 that he'd done custom. We put this together for the customer in 9. So again, it avoids a couple of steps. Instead of exporting to a CSV, then I have to go open Excel, import it in there, and do those kinds of things. I'm able to run this right from Excel and bring it in. The cool thing is you can already see across the top, the filters are already in place. I'm going to filter on the username column for my name. And right away, I've already got the data cut down to just look at my equipment or my application usage right here. Oddly, I spend a lot of time in the browser. But again, I'm in management. That's what we do. But we're going to go look at Evernote because that makes it look like I do something. So again, but what I've been able to do is filter on those columns right down to figure out, do I use Evernote? Should I keep a license? So different things you could do. You can go back in, clear those filters. If you're into data analysis, you've got all this data here. You could do crosstabs if you wanted to very quickly do the analysis to figure out, how many Evernote licenses are we using or different sorts of things like that. Super powerful analysis tools that are in Excel today that you can use. I used to work for a business intelligence company. Our #1 competitor for reporting tools was Excel because it is so powerful. You can build charts and graphs and put those things out there. But again, this isn't the end-all solution. We're gonna quick jump into a reporting tool here called INET Clear. How many of you are familiar with Crystal Reports? Has anybody used Crystal Reports? This is, I guess they've renamed it in the interim since I last used Crystal Reports. Crystal Reports goes way back. This is a cool little tool. It's free to begin using. And again, you could get started with business intelligence. Now, what a tool like this allows you to do is to build custom reports for people that you can then publish. So I could put out, if your manager says, you know, I really want to understand what users have what devices. I don't know if that's a great question or not for this one, but that's what we'll go with. You'd be able to put together a fancy report, because again, management wants fancy reports, because if it's fancy, we don't understand it and we think it's good, right? That's what it comes down to. But again, you can build something fancy and you can schedule those to run. Maybe they want it every Friday. Maybe they have a management meeting. Schedule it to run in the intelligence system, whatever it is, and it's going to appear. They could have a dashboard with that report. They can do their analysis on it and go about it. Hundreds of different things you can do to, again, get back to unleashing all that great information that's in your JSS. So we're just going to do a very simple example here. So we're going to start with, we're just going to create a new blank report, and we're going to use that computers to normalize table that Dave was talking about that's new in 9.0, which it's magic, the way you'll be able to go after stuff. Once we run it, and you look at how ugly a report you can create with that, well, how ugly a report I can create with that. We're going to clean it up a little bit, show you some of the things you can do there, and then we're going to add some grouping by username. The example we're going to use is, for instance, you've got someone on the road. They call in and say, man, my gear's gone, and you want to look at all their stuff by their user. John Sutcliffe in this example is what we'll drill through. Very quickly, you could run the report. Here's all the computers they have. Here are all the iPads they have. Here are the peripherals they have. All that information is available in the JSS, and we can put it together in one group. We're only going to take a look at bringing the computers together today, but we could add those other things in very simply. So again, it's just one-stop shop, all the gear that you've collected in the JSS for that user. So here we go. All right, we're going to start up INET Clear. And again, we're going to talk about some other third-party tools as we get through this as well. We're going to start a blank report. The install on this is very simple too. This is super easy to get started with. Blank report, you can see I've got a bunch of different sections. We're going to go ahead and start with the title on this report. Anybody guess what I'm going to call it? Hey, all right. It's good. You guys are awake at 9 a.m. on day 2 of the NUC. That's outstanding. So it's our test report. We need some data in this though. So we're going to go, and I have already magically created a connection to the database, but I still need to tie that to this report. So here we go. We're going to run the database wizard. I'm going to pick my connection. This is not ODBC now. We're actually using a MySQL JDBC driver at this point. I could, if I wanted to, add other data sources. Again, I could tie into multiple data sources to bring into this report if I wanted to. Maybe I have data I want to bring from Salesforce to go with my JSS. We could do that. So we're going to go ahead now, connecting to it. And now I've got that long list of tables again that are available in my JSS. So I'm going to go down and get the computers to normalize table and drag that in. And there it is, magically. We'll take a look at that. Now, what I could add joins here and different sorts of things if I wanted to, but again, in the interest of time, we're going to keep it simple. Now, I'm going to pick some fields out of that table, the first one being the computer name. I want to understand the computer names that are in my JSS. Then, who are the users on these computers? So let's scroll down here, find the username, and let's also add their real name. We're going to grab real name. And the other interesting question I have is, well, if I have that, what department are they in, and what building do they work out of? So let's find those things in computer denormalize as well. We'll scroll down here. There's department name. You can't multi-select and drag here, which is annoying, but we get used to it. The other thing is when you drop fields on here, it kind of puts them off to the right and down a little, which sort of drives me nuts as well, but you know, gives you something to do on the weekend. Move these things around. So now we've got them here. Now also take a look at, we've got sections of the report. There's page header, there's report footer, page footer. We're going to hide those because it's just wasted space for us right now. So you can actually go in and here it comes, here it comes. Suppress those sections. And again, it just saves space on the report, right? If I left those in, it would actually occupy that space. The report's going to be ugly enough when you see it that if those were in there, it'd be even worse. We're going to test our result. Look at that magnificent report, right? Blues and reds and greens. It's outstanding. But again, there's information here, computer name, username, what department they're in, what location they're in. But again, it's right? So let's clean this up a little bit. We're going to adjust some of the size of our fields. And the things I'm doing here are very standard across all the reporting tools. Not doing anything that's magic. This was just an easy one to get started with if you want to get your feet wet. But let's go ahead and put some column headings on there as well, because that'll make it a little bit more readable. I can remember, was this department, or was this building, or what's user, what's that? So we're going to drop them on. And here's where I type really fast. Look, I just had it dialed in. The coffee was flowing just right there, and just do. So it was amazing. Anyway, we're cleaning that up a little bit. But now the other thing as I start to look at this and I'm drilling through this report, I'm thinking, you know what? I've got a username on here. What if I group the equipment by the user, right? I want to see all the machines that belong to John Sutcliffe. I don't want this sorted by computer name. So let's go ahead and do that. As we go out, we're going to, still doing a little bit of cleanup here, because I'm a stickler for details. You can ask these guys. You guys can lie, it's okay. But now, again, over here, we've got group data. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a new group right here. Notice the fields on the report, that's going to change when we come back. I'm in the group dialog. I'm going to add a new field that I want to group on. This means everything in that column, or if they're the same, they're going to be put together. We're going to go look for the username very quickly here. Username, there it is. Pick that. And as simple as that now, everything is going to be rolled up by user as we put this together. We'll click OK. Now, notice on the report, there's a group header section that's appeared and a group footer. Just did that for you. If you wanted to put some titling, you wanted to do some totaling on groups or things like that, you could. We're not going to do that for this example, so I'm going to suppress those as I did before. The other thing is on the page header, I had to unsuppress that so my column headings show up. So let's go take a look at the results. Notice on the left now, there's a list of usernames, and I can search that list. So we're going to look for Sutcliffe, drill through that, and pick John Sutcliffe out of the list. And right away now, we're going to jump down to the two machines that I own. Porky is my test machine. I don't know how I got named that way. I got it gifted to me, and then my production MacBook Pro are right there so I could see that. So the other things I could do on this is, using the username, I could group equipment across mobile devices. Maybe you assign printers to people. We have a place to put peripherals in the database and get those things on the report so I can see all the gear that's tied to someone as we go through it. So again, this is just a very simple thing using computers to normalize. As we start to add more information under the hood, it's going to get a little bit more complicated, but the sky's the limit when you start to go at the database. But again, we caution you to think about these queries you build. If you build a query not as effectively as you could, that's why we have Dave. Dave SQL Searing is what we like to call him, because he looks over our show and goes, that query is going to destroy your database. And he's always right. We do that. But again, you want to be careful when you're doing these sorts of things or take your data elsewhere. So let's move ahead here. All right, so very quickly I want to talk about some of the other tools that are out there. We're going to start with three of the big players in this market. You may have heard of these companies. IBM Cognos, business intelligence tool. If you're in an enterprise, you may already have one of these in-house. And if you do have one of these tools in-house, there's probably a team who's already doing this. They've probably built some data warehouses, and they're probably more than willing to work with you a little bit on different things. So it's worth looking around, talking to your IT group. Well, we are IT, right? But some of the people around this to see if these things are in-house. These aren't cheap. They aren't for the faint of heart. Very powerful tools that can do a lot for you. If you want to get started, there are a lot of enterprise class tools out there that are open source. And you can get started for little or no cost to begin to experiment. And what they do then is they layer services on top of that. So you get the single machine, individual reporting thing for free, but then if you want to start to add servers and those sorts of things, that's where cost begins to come into the picture. INET Clear used to be Crystal Reports. BERT, Business Intelligence and Reporting Tools. This is from the Eclipse org. It's free. It's provided. Actuate is another reporting company that actually does the BERT model. So that's a good one to get started in. That one is much more developer-centric, though. If you're not comfortable in a developer environment, you may not want to go down that path. Jasper Reports is another good one. Google Charts also. Jeremy Matthews, where's Jeremy? Right here down in the front. In our API session yesterday, we had a link in there to some examples that are actually using Google Charts to be able to build this. He provided a couple examples where we're taking data using the API, pushing it into Google Charts to be able to do some pie charts and things, which would be a way to get started. Links. You read that? All right. The links are all URLs, so I'm like, it's not worth putting up here right now. It's in the recording. We'll also get these up on the event on the website so you can get to these things. I added Pentaho on here, which is another one. The link to get the ODC Manager for your Macs is on there. The SQL Pro link is there. Again, if you query on those things, you'll be able to get them. But again, they're free tools and super helpful. So now we'll open it up to questions and want to hear what you guys are up to. They're asleep. It was a good night.
For the phase part who doesn't have the developers on staff, are there any tools that are reports that are built into Casper that will give us some of this information?
Wow. Just the built-in reporting?
Yeah. I guess that was kind of the idea, was showing some of the stuff built into the JSS. Is a lot of this is reported on. One view that I didn't show, and I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't, is the improved search for applications in 9. You can group those by department or building. That shows a lot more detail and is easier to kind of dig into who has what as far as applications. But yeah, I mean, there's...
Yeah, the advanced search stuff Nick was talking about that you saw in 8, we showed a little bit in 9. A lot of these capabilities are there where you can drill in and do a lot of that reporting there kind of built in. And our intention is always to keep that in place. This is, if you want to go above and beyond what you can get straight out of the JSS, this is kind of that next step. But hopefully all the basic stuff you're going to be able to get to, well, it's not even basic, it's very sophisticated stuff you're going to be able to get to right in the JSS. So if you could probably stop up with the support folks too, or talk to us after. We could, if you have some specific questions, we could show you down that path a little bit too.
There's somebody right here.
Sure.
I was wondering if you have anybody who's tying into a separate asset management database in any sense to get lifecycle stats. Do you do that at the JPlug Trust Museum in LA?
The question was about, is anybody tying to another asset management database? Are you familiar with the SCCM Connector? Are you guys using that, or? No. Okay, we have several plugins. I mentioned the JSS Connector plugin. We also have one that will take JSS data and move it into an SCCM repository, and another one for Altiris. What we find in the enterprise a lot is, as Macs are growing in the enterprise, Windows have already been there, so in a lot of places they already have a management system in place on the Windows side. They've already built management reporting around it. So we do have those connectors that go that way. We haven't been approached about building one to bring stuff into the JSS on that way, so the answer is yes, I think. Does that kind of answer your question?
That's tough. That's more the job of the API, I guess, to make sure all the connections are made between tables, that we're lining up keys, foreign keys, and all that, and we can do the lookups and not end up with a 500 error on a page in the JSS or something. So
Yeah.
that'd be the right way to do something like that, I guess, is to tie into the REST API.
And a lot of that, we have placeholders for that information. So we have purchasing information for devices. I think we even have like a life expectancy and PO date and stuff like that. But yeah, we would prefer that you'd use like the API to connect to it and write to it that way, because then you get the benefit of the API is going to write to the database the same way that the UI essentially would, right? So it's going to do it really efficiently, and it's only going to affect those very limited fields that you want to affect. Yep.
If there's fields that, that the placeholder ones that we have in there don't already work with, you could make an extension attribute to hold some of that data as well, and that can all be used through the API. So.
The problem you would face if you added fields or different things like that, when we come through and do an upgrade from 9.2 to 9.3, there are going to be no guarantees. We may notice a field, because part of what we do in the database upgrade process is we look for things that are no longer used, and we will remove those. So you could be up against that, but again, you use extension attributes, something like that. Next, right behind. Yes?
So I've already purchased the ODC driver and I use file, and I haven't hooked them up together yet. But would I be able to do a query of like location history? Like I can see the location history by looking at a individual computer and then looking at the location history. And if I wanted to search for names that showed up in the history of a variety of computers, would I be able to do something like that? By querying the database?
Yep, absolutely.
Repeat the question.
So,
Yeah, you want to repeat the question?
sure, so the question was, we've got the location history that you can see in the inventory tab. So like you can go to a single device, go to the details, and look at everybody who has had that computer. Through the database, can we get the look for a specific username and find out all the machines that it shows up on? The answer is absolutely. And I guess it kind of gets into the query a little bit more, but we can chat about that after the session. I can give you some tips on what you want to be looking there.
And then right behind you was another hand.
Actually, it wasn't the same exact question, but
Got it? All right.
And back there.
hey, can you guys give us some best practices? Are all of these tools read-only, or should we be creating a read-only user for accessing the database, or should we use that plugin to offload to the different JSS database that we're looking at? Are we worried about causing damage to the database if we're using any of these third-party tools?
Dave?
Yep. So question was, should we be using separate users or a different JSS to do these queries so that we can't cause any damage to our JSS? The answer is those are great ideas. We have a KB article on actually creating a read-only user that has access to the JSS. So you absolutely want to do that if you're using any of these third-party tools. If you have a really large environment that you need to do this reporting on where the queries could take a while, using the JSS to JSS connector to just kind of migrate that data before you do your reporting, also a fantastic idea, but not really a requirement. I guess then the short answer there is you just never really want to actually write into the JSS database, because that can cause all sorts of weird things to start happening for you.
And I would say the two tools we showed are read-only. They're not going to write data back, but again, following the principles of creating a user, limiting their rights and those kinds of things is really a best practice. Oh, down here. Can we report on iOS usage data?
I'll take that one. No, at this point, there aren't any APIs that allow us to access that information built into the MDM API that we can access from Apple. If they were to open something like that up, we'd definitely be interested in getting that information to kind of close the loop on, we can do it for computers, and obviously we would want to be able to do that as well, but yeah, we don't really have a way to be able to do that today.
I just want to make sure I have this process right. So the first step is to get that ODC Connector connected to the Jamf database, read-only user.
Yeah. Yeah, mostly. The question was the steps if I want to use the INET Clear. The one difference between INET Clear and Excel is INET Clear, you don't need the ODC driver. That's required for Excel. INET Clear uses a JDBC driver, Java database connector, and you can get that from the MySQL website and get that installed. It might even come with INET. I can't remember where I installed that from, but again, it's whatever the tool, you build that connection. The user that you put on that connection would be this read-only user that you'd set up for your JSS, so that's who would have access to it. And then you're going to see those tables and you can start to build your queries.
On the back there.
Do you have any standard templates for exporting data to go into a CMDB?
No. The question was, do we have any standard templates to go into a CMDB? Do you want a CMDB? Do you want to?
ITEL version 3 is a standard reporting database for IT support centers and whatnot for change control and whatnot. You have configuration objects and things like that.
No, we don't have those. We have been hearing a lot about, I don't know if Splunk is exactly the same kind of a tool. We're getting requests for being able to take our logs and other information as well and put them into more of a centralized, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe a Splunk, but yeah, log integrator. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Kind of a log integration for the enterprise. So they have that in one place, whether it's about SOX compliance or some of those sorts of things. We haven't done that yet. That would be something to really take a hard look at, though. That it? Last call? All right, thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.